Bar rescue is built on a simple idea. Walk into a failing bar, identify what's going wrong, and fix it before the business collapses completely. In this video, we're going to find out what happened to every bar from Season 1 of Bar Rescue. Starting with Angel's Sports Bar. Located in Corona, California, it was the very first bar featured on Bar Rescue. And from the moment you understand the setup, you can already see why things were going wrong. And the bar was owned by a woman named Renee, who invested her life savings into the business in 1992. Interestingly, the bar is just beside a strip club called Angel's Gentlemen's Club, so both businesses look the same. It was nearly impossible to tell where the sports bar ended and the strip club began. To make matters worse, the staff always wore revealing tops and short skirts that made them look less like bartenders and more like performers at a strip club. But that confusion wasn't the only issue. Inside Angel's Sports Bar, the atmosphere had slowly deteriorated into something chaotic. The place had developed a reputation for attracting rowdy biker crowds, making women feel less safe. The interior was dirty and poorly maintained. And as expected, the Yelp reviews told the whole story.
Dank, stank, and carpet smells. Yuck. No thanks.
When John Taffer went in to observe the bar, it didn't take long to see that the problems didn't stop with the bad atmosphere. The cocktails were also poorly made, and the bartenders didn't seem to know what liquor they were carrying behind the bar. And the kitchen was advertising fresh-baked pizza that was clearly just frozen pizza still sitting on the cardboard tray it came packaged in. Then there was the awkward payment situation.
We do, however, have an ATM.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Credit card machine is broken. You have to use cash, and then she points you to the ATM machine, which has a $6 fee. So my pizza just cost $6 more.
General Manager Wayne's apathetic attitude towards the job wasn't helping either.
Only a part, and so we just let it go.
The bar was losing as much as $4,000 per month, and he couldn't even keep track of the exact numbers. It became painfully clear that the real rescue wasn't the building or the menu, it was leadership. So John decided to start the rescue by addressing the chief problem.
The books really don't mean anything when you're done because they're not accurate. What else do you do?
Fix like a broken outlet or something like that. I mean,
Fix a broken outlet.
right here and there and stuff. I mean,
You're our new general manager. You're our new assistant manager, and your days are numbered.
With the leadership reset, John and his team could finally begin rebuilding the business from the ground up. He got the staff to clean the bar and brought in one of the country's top mixologists to teach the bartenders how to properly identify their liquors, prepare cocktails correctly, and create drinks that customers would actually want to order. At the soft opening, the service was a whole lot better, but there's still one gigantic problem: unruly staff.
Step out of the
I
office.
think you're the one that's wrong.
I want you to go and never come back.
And I need my money for the both paychecks that you owe me.
John dealt with that problem, and Wayne also resigned, creating a better environment for John and his team to spring into action and completely renovate the bar. The bar relaunched under a new name with a neater and much more appealing interior, and the results were immediate. The place was packed with customers, and women felt safer because the new no parking sign prevented bikers from crowding the entrance, making the bar look a lot less like a hangout for rowdy motorcycle gangs. Within just 2 months, sales had reportedly doubled, bringing in new customers and giving the business a fresh start that it desperately needed. For a moment, it seemed like Angel's Sports Bar had finally turned the corner, as it did well for a few years, but things started to take a downward turn in 2015, when a stabbing happened just outside the bar. When officers arrived, they found one man with a non-life-threatening stab wound who was taken to the hospital, and a second man was later discovered dead in the east parking lot. The officers took a suspect into custody for questioning, though it was initially unclear if the stabbings were connected. The owners tried to move away from all the negative attention the event had drawn to the bar, and even changed the bar's name from Rax Billiards and Bourbon to Bar 1650, but apparently the bar needed more than a name change to regain its reputation. The reviews went from average to flat-out bad. The bar eventually had to close for good in 2018, and the following year there was a fire at the empty location. If you thought Rax Billiard and Bourbon's fall-off was bad, wait till you hear what happened to the next bar in episode 2. Downy's Irish Pub, located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a once celebrated Irish pub that was frequently visited by the rich and famous, but had clearly lost its way after the owner, Domenico Centofanti, suffered from a family tragedy. Domenico bought the bar in 2002 from the original owner, Jack Downy, and tasted some level of success, but things came crashing down in 2005 when his brother killed his mother and then committed suicide. The tragedy understandably took a heavy toll on Domenico, and over time, it began to show in the way he ran the bar. By 2010, Downy's had gone so down that Domenico filed for bankruptcy. Then came John for the ultimate rescue. To see what was really happening, John sent in Keith Raimondi to experience the bar like a regular customer, and it didn't take long for problems to show up.
The bar was gross.
It did have a slight odor.
There were some flies around, there's a lot of dust, a lot of clutter.
There were definitely a few characters in there, and then just a couple knuckleheads drinking car bombs.
For starters, the bar barely carried any Irish whiskey, despite branding itself as an Irish pub, with just a handful of bottles like Jameson, Bushmills, and Powers behind the bar. The menu was just as confusing. Instead of leading into Irish pub classics, the kitchen was serving things like pasta dishes and quesadillas, which didn't match the theme at all. One of the biggest red flags came when a customer complained about oysters.
I need to go back.
Oh, okay.
They're terrible. I'm not even going to pay for this.
Then there was a cleanliness problem, which was impossible to ignore. The bathrooms had a strong odor of stale beer and vomit, and the kitchen wasn't any better. Food was sitting on the floor, trash boxes weren't even broken down, and dirty dishes were piled in buckets that hadn't been cleaned for days. And it got worse. Fruit flies hovered around the bar. During the inspection, John Taffer even spotted a mouse that had been dead for weeks. Still, despite the chaos, Taffer believed the bar had potential because of its history and its location. To help turn things around, he brought in Brian Duffy, who had actually worked at Downy's during its glory days 12 years earlier, and had since become one of America's top Irish-style chefs. With someone who understood both the bar's past and its potential, the rescue focused on restoring Downy's identity as a proper Irish pub instead of the mismatched concept it had become. The menu was simplified, the kitchen was cleaned and reorganized, and the team worked to bring pride back to the operation. By the time the rescue wrapped up, the hope was that this historic Philadelphia pub could return to being the neighborhood institution it once was, instead of the chaotic, unsanitary mess it had become in recent years. And it worked. Well, at least for some time. Customers were spending more money and the bar was generally in a better financial state, but a barrage of problems soon set in. Downy lost its liquor license in November 2015, which immediately put enormous pressure on the business. Without the ability to serve alcohol, the bar struggled to stay afloat, and the situation quickly spiraled. By 2016, the establishment had accumulated over $80,000 in unpaid taxes and interest, forcing it to shut its doors for good, roughly 5 years after the bar rescue episode first aired. But the signs were already there before that, as Downy's had been listed for sale in mid-2015, signaling that the owners were already searching for a way out. After the closure, the historic Front Street property was eventually sold at a sheriff's sale in 2017 for $1.15 million, marking the final chapter for a bar that had once been a Philadelphia staple. Years later, plans were put in place to completely redevelop the site. In July 2021, the old Downy's building was scheduled for demolition, with developers planning to replace it with a mixed-use structure featuring commercial space on the ground floor and 18 residential units above it, along with a rooftop deck for residents. By August 2022, Google Street View images showed the property already in the process of being torn down. And according to reports shared online in early 2023, the demolition was eventually completed, leaving no trace of the old pub that once stood there. Like Downy's, the Abbey was also a once legendary Irish pub that had things going for them at first, bringing in as much as $50,000 per week. The bar was located in Chicago and owned by Irish immigrant Tom Looney, who had purchased the business more than 20 years earlier, turning it into a hotspot for both drinks and live music. But the turning point came when Tom's son, Pat Looney, who had successfully run the bar for over 15 years, decided to leave and pursue his dream of becoming a firefighter. With Pat gone, management of the bar fell to his brother, Tom Looney Jr., an electrician by trade who had little experience running a hospitality business, and the results were almost immediate.
Our volume now might be 10,000 a week.
Not only did sales collapse, but the building started falling apart as well, and the once popular bar quickly turned into a struggling business on the verge of closing. Their parents were hoping to retire, tensions between the brothers were rising, and after more than 2 decades of ownership, the Looney family was only 3 months away from losing the bar completely. When John Taffer arrived to investigate, he immediately noticed something unusual about the bar's layout. The building was split into 2 sections, a traditional Irish pub on one side and a music venue on the other, separated by less than 10 feet. In theory, that should have been a huge advantage because concert crowds crowds could easily walk into the bar for drinks or food before and after shows. But when there's no concert, the pub side is nearly empty. But on the inside, things were even worse.
Do you have a drink menu or something?
We don't have a drink menu that I can offer to you.
Okay.
No drink menu, which meant customers rarely ordered anything beyond basic beer or simple cocktails. And without a menu encouraging premium drinks, the bar was losing valuable revenue on every order. At the same time, bartenders were overpouring alcohol, which might make customers happy in the moment, but quietly drains thousands of dollars in profit over time. Cleanliness was another issue. The floors were filthy, and trash was scattered around. John also realized that the bar was losing $1.03 for every dollar of food sold, meaning every single meal they served actually cost them money. With the business hanging by a thread, Taffer took control and forced everyone to admit their problems. John brought in a whiskey expert mixologist to create a new cocktail menu, and Chef Brian Duffy to set things right with the food. The rescue also focused on improving management and finally connecting the pub side with a busy concert venue so that the bar could actually profit from the crowds already walking through the door.
Over to the pub and order a cocktail after the show. We got a lot to do. Go to work.
Thank you, sir.
After years of decline, the hope was that the Abbey could rediscover the formula that once made it one of Chicago's most popular neighborhood venues. And for a few years, they thrived, but the owners eventually ran into financial problems that made them sell the property in 2015. They were able to negotiate a lease, but the Abbey finally met its end that same year after a fire broke out on November 17, 2015, starting near the back door and spreading toward the main stage. The exact cause of the fire was never determined, and although firefighters managed to contain it, the building suffered significant smoke damage. The Loonies had plans to renovate the building and keep the Abbey alive, but those plans ended up failing. A new bar with the same name currently exists at the same location, but it has no ties to the Looney family. While the Abbey enjoyed a long spell of success before running into problems that made them invite John for the rescue, Kilkenny's Irish pub was only successful for a short time. The bar was located in Redondo Beach, California, a place where thousands of potential customers passed by every day, yet almost none of them ever bothered to walk inside. The bar was owned by sisters Allie and Alexis, who used inheritance money to start, but bad decisions like Allie employing her ex-boyfriend Carlos as general manager were sinking the place financially, putting her in up to $900,000 in debt. Carlos essentially ran the bar without much accountability, and his lack of knowledge was one of the first things John saw on the bar's Yelp reviews.
The manager was pretty clueless.
We got our work cut out for us.
John and his wife Nicole also observed that the bar's concept itself made no sense. Despite calling itself an Irish pub, everything about it was far from Irish. Inside the bar, the execution was just as sloppy. Customers ordering margaritas received them in completely different glasses because the bar apparently owned only one proper margarita glass. The floors were messy. The food was not something anyone would actually want to put in their mouths. And while Nicole and other customers were having the worst possible experience, the owner was busy receiving a message from a customer. When John stepped in, he started showing the sisters how the bar's dirtiness was driving away customers and how the inside was incredibly confusing. Josh invited Josh Capon to help with revamping the kitchen, and when he walked inside to give it a look, it was a disaster.
Health department walks in, that's a violation, because you're picking up food and we're in the garbage.
To take care of the drinks, John brought in Michael Tips, an expert mixologist who realized that the bar didn't have the ingredients to make basic cocktails like a Manhattan, a Cosmo, Mojito, and Margarita. With ingredients to serve customers missing, there was only one person to hold responsible.
Whose fault is it?
Carlos?
Okay, don't be afraid to say it.
When Taffer tried to confront Carlos about the failing operation, the general manager barely paid attention, was texting on his phone during the conversation, and walked out angrily when the discussion came down to a basic understanding of how money works. To fix the mess, Taffer decided the bar needed a complete identity shift that actually matched its oceanfront setting. The rescue transformed the space into Breakwall Bar and Grill, a laid-back surf-themed barbecue bar designed to appeal to beachgoers in pier traffic rather than pretending to be an Irish pub. The relaunch came with several practical upgrades as well. A new POS system replaced the old ticket system so orders could be tracked properly. The menu was simplified and redesigned to highlight the bar's most profitable items, and the space itself was reworked to embrace the surf culture of the area, and Carlos was demoted to a lesser role.
I'm already the manager.
That's right.
So I'm going to manage it, so let me do it.
The grand reopening was a huge success, and customers were everywhere, and the bar sold 3 times more food and drinks in 1 hour than it did the week before. Even the nonchalant Carlos had good things to say after the rescue, but the changes didn't last long and the Yelp reviews were very discouraging. And with reviews like that, doom was just around the corner. Breakwall lost its liquor license and closed up in 2012. A restaurant called Barney's Beanery then took over the location, but they were met with a similar fate as Breakwall, closing down in 2020. If you think Breakwall owners were stubborn for not maintaining the changes John made, then you've probably never heard of Swanky Bubbles, a small champagne bar located in Philadelphia. The bar was co-owned by John Frankowski and Ryan Dorsey, who both did crazy numbers with the bar initially, peaking at around $100,000 a month, but they soon started losing close to $4,000 a month. They became desperately in need of John Taffer's saving. The concept itself was already shaky. Swanky Bubbles had been built around the champagne bar trend, but by the time John showed up, that wave had already faded, leaving the bar stuck with an identity that no longer excited customers. Even worse, the physical layout made service painfully slow, with a narrow bar and a permanently fixed gate that forced staff to literally crawl underneath just to get behind the counter, which made every drink order take longer than it should. The menu wasn't helping either. It jumped from sushi to Italian gnocchi to goat cheese quesadillas, with no real theme connecting them. And yeah, the size of that menu was simply unbelievable. Drinks weren't any better and had seriously disturbing names.
Who came up with that?
That's me.
And Ryan, who was supposed to be running the business, only seemed interested in trying to impress women. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. The bar regularly ran out of liquor, forcing staff to improvise drinks or skip them entirely, and the kitchen was operating with questionable food safety practices.
Do you think they made this rice?
Probably yesterday.
Okay. This isn't in the refrigerator, is it?
It's not.
So that means it's full of what?
Full of bacteria.
Yes.
John brought in expert chef Brian Hill and expert mixologist Elaine Duke to take over the food and drinks respectively. The team got to train the staff, and then John subjected the bar to a stress test to see if they had learned anything. Clearly, they hadn't learned much. During the stress test, the problems stacked up quickly. Drinks took forever, orders piled up, and customers grew frustrated as ticket times stretched far longer than they should have. Despite the very obvious problems, John believed the bar could still be saved. The solution started with simplifying everything. The massive confusing menu was cut down, and the awkward bar layout was redesigned so that the bartenders could finally move efficiently. And the name was changed to Sheer, a name that would encourage more women to want to come in.
It's a name women relate to, and men go where the women are.
Swanky Bubbles was dated.
For a moment, the rescue had worked, but pretty much as soon as John left, Swanky Bubbles quietly reverted back to its old ways, undoing many of the changes that had been put in place. Even the name was changed back to Swanky Bubbles. The bar started to face even more problems. Legal battles between the landlord and the bar's owners over the liquor license, tax liens against the bar, and it eventually folded up the same year the episode aired. As of 2023, a British pub called the Victoria Free House had occupied the location. Swanky Bubbles barely survived even after a rescue, but at least they had adult problems, unlike the Blue Frog 22, which was both named like a child's playground and designed like one. The bar looked less like a nightlife spot and more like someone had dumped an entire toy chest across the room. Board games sat on tables, plastic decorations hung from the ceiling, and random childhood memorabilia was scattered everywhere, giving the place a strange carnival-like atmosphere that made it hard for customers to take the bar seriously. The concept had come from owner Mimi, who ran the place with her son. She wanted the place to feel playful and nostalgic, but instead, it created total confusion about what the bar actually was. Before John was called in for a rescue, Mimi and her son had only run the place for less than 2 years, and they were already seriously struggling.
I'm struggling to pay the bills.
Deal with it.
Yes, the bar's childish theme definitely played a role in the woes, but it went far beyond that. During the first visit, John quickly noticed that Mimi had been drinking heavily behind the bar, something that instantly raised red flags. Then came the food. One of the first dishes tested sounded interesting, deep-fried macaroni and cheese balls, but it came out terrible, frozen in the middle, sitting on a dirty plate, and paired with a strange gravy-like sauce that made the whole thing look completely unappetizing. Behind the bar, things were just as messy with mother and son.
This is what I'm telling you, you're overreacting.
You know what? I'm struggling to pay the bills.
While the entire workstation was poorly arranged, forcing bartenders to take unnecessary steps just to make a basic drink or pour a beer, slowing down service and creating even more frustration for customers waiting at the bar. The biggest issue was clearly leadership. When Taffer asked who the manager was, the answers were just shocking.
You guessed that would be you?
Yeah.
No.
Who is the decision maker? So decisions have to go through 4 people.
The roles were never clearly defined. Employees didn't know whose instructions they were supposed to follow, and that lack of structure had slowly turned the bar into a disorganized mess. To fix it, John needed the staff to have someone who is clearly in charge.
I need to bounce something back.
You do.
So
You do it?
I can do it.
Yeah, I know you're in the spot. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next came the concept. Most of the random toys and decorations were removed. The space was reorganized, and the bar was redesigned to feel more like a modern neighborhood hangout rather than a chaotic game room. The kitchen menu was simplified. The bar setup was reorganized for efficiency, and the team was trained to work together under a clearer management structure. By the time the grand reopening arrived, the transformation was obvious. John changed the bar's name to The Local, a simple name really, but it was much better than Blue Frog 22, and it was well received by the owners.
John, notice the color carry.
Inside, the atmosphere was more organized and aesthetically pleasing, and the staff was now operating as a real team instead of a confused group of employees following different directions. During the relaunch, the customers were clearly pleased with the changes as well.
A nice place to go after work just to get a bite to eat, a drink with friends.
The bar kept thriving even after John and his rescue team left, with food sales rising by 50%. Just like Blue Frog 22, the Chicken Bone was another bar with a weird name in Bar Rescue Season 1. Located in Framingham, Massachusetts, and owned by Bill Rodenheiser, the Chicken Bone was a massive 4,200 square foot bar that somehow managed to confuse absolutely everyone about what it was supposed to be. Was it a bar or a family restaurant? It did have a family-friendly setting, and that was really off because you don't want kids running around in a bar where adults are trying to drink. From the sign outside to the awkwardly placed stage, the Chicken Bone was a confusing bar. Then came the menu. It was enormous, page after page after page, a total disaster by restaurant standards, and sure enough, the food reflected exactly that. One dish literally had a typo in the menu. But the much bigger mystery was the finances, which simply showed that Bill had no idea how to run a bar.
$1 million a year now here?
Yeah.
Then how are you losing money?
That's what I want to know.
Things got even stranger in the kitchen. There were no safety mats on the floor. Knives were stored in dirty spaces. Fryer oil looked like diesel fuel. And when the staff began cleaning deeper into the kitchen, they discovered something horrifying. John closed the kitchen for the soft opening, which made Bill storm out angrily, but the bartenders were allowed to serve. That's when they realized where all the money was going.
On the rocks, it's 1.5 ounces.
Okay.
If you get a mix, it's 2.5 ounces.
Are you serious?
Between spoiled food, oversized portions, and poor management, the mystery of the missing money was finally solved. Before the grand reopening, Bill came back to his senses, and that moment changed everything.
Displacing my anger and frustration on you, and I'm hoping that you'll accept my apology.
With the team finally willing to listen, John turned the place into a more mature bar, adjusted drink portions, simplified the menu, and gave it a new identity that actually matched the crowd it was trying to attract. He also gave the bar a slight name change. They kept most of John's changes, except that they blended old and new names, calling it Blue Frog's Local 22. Unfortunately, they started to struggle again in 2015 because a neighboring condo complex was getting in the way of the Local opening their summer patio. By 2018, they could no longer keep up and announced that they were closing for good. After John left, the bar kept doing well for some time, but it slowly started slipping back to its old ways and even returned to the old name. Business slowed during the 2014 summer months, forcing the owners to shut down temporarily. The plan to open after Labor Day remained on, and the owners even reassured the public through an October 2014 Facebook post that they were trying to set up a reopening date. But that reopening never happened. The owners eventually attempted to sell the business for around $175,000, though the sale never appeared to go through. Not long after, a Mexican restaurant called El Mariachi moved into the location, giving the property a brief second life. That didn't last long either. El Mariachi eventually closed in 2020, and the building once again fell silent. In the years that followed, the property was listed for sale for about $1.9 million, but there's little evidence that the sale was ever completed. Street view images from 2024 showed the property is now surrounded by fencing, showing clear signs of abandonment. While the Chicken Bone was consistently running at a loss, Champ's Sports Bar was making a profit, but it was simply far from being enough. Former teacher Joe Handy opened Champ's in 1983, and when it opened, it was the first sports bar in Burbank, California. At first, the bar was making good profit, racking up to $60,000 a month. But Joe checked out, and that was the beginning of the problems. He then allowed his wife Helen to run the finances, but that didn't solve the problem. They realized that the bar was missing out on the younger crowd who made up most of the population in the area, so they brought in younger staff, but again, that move didn't help. The young bartenders even made matters worse themselves as they constantly overpoured drinks for customers in order to get bigger tips. Joe was pretty firm on that matter.
Them, she's the one stealing from you, right?
Right.
Aside from the overpouring problem, the bartenders weren't using the pour spouts properly and the stations were disorganized, making it slower to serve customers. But the worst part was that they knew next to nothing about how to mix drinks.
That's god-awful.
Sorry.
No one's ever trained them, and nobody in this four walls has any idea how much alcohol is going into any of these drinks.
The kitchen wasn't any better as it had dirt everywhere in it, and sure enough, the food that came out of it was a total mess. When Chef Brian Hill, who worked as a recon on this rescue, initially went in undercover, he got the shock of his life with what was served on his plate in the name of nachos. And this was even supposed to be the good stuff because the cheesesteak was definitely much worse.
Don't do the Philly cheesesteak here. It's terrible.
Champ's staff clearly lacked confidence. The food was terrible and some cooks were drinking on the job. Handwritten tickets were messy, servers didn't know where to take food, and the bar's workflow was all over the place. Basically, chaos everywhere. Taffer quickly identified the issues: overpouring, untrained staff, inefficient layout, lack of accountability, and an outdated, uninviting atmosphere. He started fixing the problems by training the staff, then modernized the flow, repositioned beer stations for speed, and gave the bar a fresher vibe while keeping some of its original charm. By the end of the rescue, the changes made a huge difference. The outside was much more appealing, the bartenders could work faster, the guests got their drinks more efficiently, and the bar finally felt like a place where people wanted to hang out. The entire Champs team embraced the changes John made, and unlike the other bars that were previously mentioned in this list, this one managed to remain open. The reviews are mixed. Some customers say it's good, while others say it's terrible. But at least the bar's still standing, so that really tells the whole story. One thing that made life easier for John with Champs was how they admitted to their wrongs, but Paulie Ambrose, the former minor league baseball player and owner of Canyon Inn, wasn't really that kind of guy. At the Canyon Inn, the biggest issue wasn't just the drinks, the food, or even the cleanliness. It was the culture inside the place. From the moment John's wife, Nicole, stepped inside to observe the bar, it immediately became obvious that the place was filled almost entirely with older regulars who had practically taken ownership of the place, and they didn't seem interested in sharing it with anyone new. According to reports from online reviews, those regulars had developed a reputation for making newcomers feel unwelcome. Some customers had walked in, had a single drink, and then left right away because the environment felt hostile.
Old angry regulars who run newcomers out of the place.
If new people kept leaving the moment they arrived, the bar would never grow. The service practices inside the bar weren't helping either. During the surveillance test, Nicole ordered a Stella, expecting it to come fresh from the tap. Instead, the bartender reached under the counter and pulled out a beer that had already been poured earlier, meaning the drink had likely been sitting there for a while. Soon after, John discovered the strange reason behind it. It was a save the foam principle that basically involved collecting excess beer foam in a pitcher whenever a pour went wrong, allowing it to settle into liquid and serving it as beer later. Then there was the issue with the glassware.
But when I held it up to drink it, I noticed in the light there were lip marks on it.
But while cheap practices were bad, the atmosphere created by the regulars turned out to be even worse. One of the regulars harassed Nicole, and the staff barely reacted to it. When John confronted Paulie, he tried to justify the situation by saying the woman hadn't complained directly, but John wasn't having it.
No, well, it is a bar.
No, they don't do that stuff in other bars. If they did that in my bar, I'd throw their ass out.
Right.
Because I understand that a bar has to have women. Do you?
The kitchen had its own problems as well. Much of the menu relied on frozen items and canned soup, and when Nicole requested soup, the staff had shocking advice for her.
I don't think any of them are good. Okay.
John's experts quickly realized the menu needed to be simplified and focused on items the kitchen could actually execute well. Paulie, too, was extremely defensive and had quite the temper, so this wasn't going to be an easy task.
Who's telling me he does know everything?
That's right.
Put it where your mouth is. You want bar rescue or you want bar startup from scratch?
With only a couple of days before the relaunch, the rescue team had to begin making major changes regardless of what Paulie thought. One of the most noticeable changes involved the bar's identity. For years, the place had been called the Canyon Inn, but the name confused many people into thinking that it was some kind of hotel rather than a bar. John decided to preserve the history while clarifying the concept, transforming the bar into Canyon Saloon. But Paulie stubbornly wasn't impressed with the new name.
Have a good time.
And I made it clear that I do not want the name changed.
The interior was redesigned to reflect the saloon-style atmosphere, creating a space that felt warmer and more inviting. Behind the bar, new equipment and better pouring tools were introduced to improve drink quality, while the kitchen began focusing on a few stronger items, including a baseball-cut steak, a specialty that connected with Paulie's love of baseball and gave the menu something unique. When the bar reopened, the transformation was obvious, and the customers were really impressed.
All the beers are actually flowing really nice. I don't have to save the foam anymore.
Unsurprisingly, Paulie decided to ditch the name Canyon Saloon and change it back to Canyon Inn Sports and Grill. After John left, the business wasn't quite reaching its peak.
And there's no reason to change the name.
Plus, it also ran into some major issues like the one in July 2025 where the bar had its liquor license suspended after an investigation found that employees served alcohol to 2 minors, leading to a single vehicle traffic collision that resulted in the death of the passenger and major injuries to the driver. But despite all those problems, the bar has managed to stay open to date. The final episode of Bar Rescue Season 1 took John Taffer to Angry Ham's Garage, a bar in Framingham, Massachusetts that looked less like a place to grab a drink and more like an auto repair shop. From the outside, the building had almost no signs that it was a bar and grill, which meant many people simply drove past without realizing what it was. Former NHL player London Byers, known to most people as LB, co-owned the bar with partners Tim and Richie, but both LB and Richie already had some serious legal issues hanging over them, including 6 combined drunk driving arrests. In one case, police said Richie allegedly flipped a truck while driving drunk with LB inside, a case that was pending in Natick District Court. With both partners dealing with those legal problems, Tim had to run the place all by himself. The legal battles were not a great way to start, as locals didn't want to have anything to do with the place. That left Tim stranded. Having made heavy investments, he had nothing to show for it. Inside the place, the staff was completely out of control, as Tim let everyone behave however they deemed fit. But given that the bar was named Angry Hams, having a few angry folks as part of the staff shouldn't be too surprising. Once John began observing the operation, the problems piled up quickly. Behind the bar, drinks were wildly inconsistent. Bartenders used 9 different types of glassware, meaning a simple drink like a scotch and soda might be served in a rocks glass one moment and a pint glass the next. Margaritas were sometimes poured into pint glasses as well, which wasted liquor and threw off the balance of the cocktail. The kitchen had its own uses. The menu allowed customers to pile unlimited toppings onto burgers without paying extra, which meant expensive items like bacon or meatballs were being added at no additional charge. While customers enjoyed the oversized burgers, the bar was essentially giving away food and destroying its profit margins. And food wasn't the only thing being handed out for free.
You guys gave away $2,807 worth of liquor. That's 8 liters of liquor. What do you think about that?
The bar also had a reputation problem. Local officials in Framingham felt the name Angry Hams mocked the town itself.
Someone from Framingham would be called an angry ham. It was a derogatory term. Not a good name for a bar.
That tension had already damaged the bar's relationship with the community. Initially, Tim resisted many of John's suggestions, insisting the concept was working and claiming he hoped to expand the brand nationwide. But after seeing the financial losses and the operational chaos, he eventually admitted the truth.
We're failing. I want you to know.
Okay, that's what I wanted to. Thank you, Tim. Now you're going to get it, man.
The confusing garage theme was streamlined, the layout was redesigned to improve sightlines, and the oversized motorcycle that once blocked view of the TVs was moved to a display area where it made more sense. Staff members were retrained on drink consistency, food service, and communication between the kitchen and front of house. The biggest moment of drama came when LB, one of the owners, failed to show up for multiple days of training and even missed an important meeting with local officials, leaving Tim with no choice.
Represent the restaurant.
Do you want?
Finally, the bar received a completely new identity. John renamed it Octane Bar and Grill, a concept that kept the automotive inspiration but clearly communicated that the business served food and drinks. The redesigned space looked cleaner, brighter, and far more welcoming, and even local officials admitted the changes dramatically improved the bar's image.
Changes the whole perception of this place.
Things went pretty smoothly for Octane after the rescue, as the bar recorded a 25% increase in sales at the 6-week check-in with bar rescue producers. The owners eventually sold the place to a guy named Mahesh Sharma in 2016, but at least that kept the bar functional. Food was still selling, but so were the sanctions. In one incident in 2018, there was a fight at the bar where the doorman was hit in the head with a rock after trying to block a drunk person from entering the bar. The bar also faced another legal issue that same year, when its license was suspended for serving alcohol to 2 underage patrons. There was a change in name in 2018 to Beacon Street Bar and Grill, but there was only so much a name change could do for a troubled bar. Angry Hams eventually closed up for good mid-2019. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like these ones as well. Don't forget to subscribe.